Ladies and gentlemen, today's episode is a bombshell. Derek Carr. Yes, that Derek Carr, the longtime Raiders quarterback who most recently suited up for the New Orleans Saints, has officially announced his retirement from the NFL. But here's the kicker. Instead of fading quietly into the background, Carr has already lined up a new role in sports media, and it could completely reshape how fans remember him. This isn't just a story about a quarterback hanging up his cleats. It's about how athletes today are reinventing themselves in real time, becoming brands, storytellers, and even influencers the moment they leave the field. And Derek Carr's sudden pivot to the media world might be one of the most interesting examples we've seen in recent years. So let's break this all down. The retirement nobody saw coming. Derek Carr's retirement announcement caught a lot of people off guard. He wasn't exactly ancient for a quarterback. At 34 years old, Carr was still younger than guys like Aaron Rodgers, Matthew Stafford, and of course, Tom Brady when he was still playing. Most analysts assumed Carr had at least a few more years left as a starter, or at the very least, as a high-level backup. Think about it. Last season with the Saints, Carr wasn't elite, but he wasn't washed either. He put up solid numbers, kept the team in playoff contention, and showed flashes of his old self. So why walk away now? Was it the injuries piling up, the endless criticism, or maybe Carr saw a different opportunity on the horizon? Let's not forget, this is a guy who's always been more than just a quarterback. Carr has been outspoken, emotional, and at times brutally honest about his journey in the NFL. And that honesty? That plays perfectly in today's media landscape. A quick look back, the Raiders roller coaster. Before we dive into his media pivot, we need to rewind. Because you can't really understand Carr's retirement decision without remembering what he went through with the Raiders. Derek Carr was drafted in 2014, and right away he became the face of a struggling franchise. He endured coaching changes, bad defenses, questionable front office decisions, and of course the chaos that was the John Gruden era. Who else remembers when the Raiders were finally looking like contenders in 2016? Carr had an MVP-caliber season until he broke his leg right before the playoffs. That injury derailed not just that season, but arguably the Raiders' entire trajectory. Some fans still believe the Raiders might have been Super Bowl contenders if Carr had stayed healthy that year. Then came the move to Las Vegas, the Antonio Brown fiasco, and the eventual falling out with the organization. When the Raiders benched Carr in 2022, it felt like a breakup, messy, emotional, and public. For many players, that might have been the end. But Carr, ever the professional, moved on to the Saints. The Saints chapter. With New Orleans, Carr was supposed to get a fresh start, and for a while it looked promising. He had weapons, a decent defense, and a fan base ready to rally behind him. But again, inconsistency and injuries nagged him. Some Saints fans felt Carr never fully clicked with the system. Others argue he was set up to fail from the start, given how shaky the offensive line was and how the team was stuck between rebuilding and contending. Either way, Carr's Saints stint wasn't a disaster, but it wasn't legendary either, which makes his sudden retirement even more interesting, because this wasn't the kind of farewell tour we see from Hall of Famers. It was quiet, abrupt, and in some ways very Derek Carr. The media role, what we know. So what exactly is Carr doing now? Reports say he signed a deal with a major sports network. Think ESPN, Fox Sports, or even Amazon Prime's NFL coverage. And honestly, this is where Carr could thrive. He's articulate. He's thoughtful. And whether you loved him or hated him as a quarterback, you can't deny that Carr always had something to say. He wasn't afraid to call out coaches, to defend teammates, or to get emotional in press conferences. In the media world, that's gold. Networks don't want robotic answers. They want passion, hot takes, and authenticity. And Carr brings all three. Now, here's where it gets fun. Imagine Carr as part of the same broadcast team as guys like Tony Romo, Drew Brees, or even Tom Brady, who's joining Fox. Wouldn't that be wild? From competing on the field to debating in the studio. Why media is the new endgame for QBs. Let's zoom out for a second. Derek Carr isn't alone here. This is part of a bigger trend in the NFL. Look at the list. Tony Romo went from Cowboys QB to CBS megastar. Tom Brady is set to become the highest-paid analyst in sports history. Peyton and Eli Manning are dominating ESPN's Manningcast. Even guys like Mark Sanchez and Dan Orlovsky have carved out roles as respected commentators. Quarterbacks are natural fits for media because they already think like analysts. They know schemes, they've led locker rooms, and they can break down the game in ways fans love. Plus, they're recognizable faces. So in some ways, Carr's pivot isn't shocking at all. But the timing? That's what makes it so fascinating. Was this really unexpected? Let's play devil's advocate for a moment. Was Derek Carr's retirement actually unexpected? Or did we just not see the signs? Carr had been dealing with nagging injuries for years, concussions, rib issues, shoulder problems. He's taken some brutal hits in his career. And unlike a Brady or Rodgers, Carr never had the luxury of playing behind an elite O-line year after year. His body has been through a lot. And then there's the mental side. Imagine spending a decade getting criticized no matter what you do. Raider fans turned on him. Saints fans never fully embraced him. The national media rarely gave him respect. At some point, you just say, why am I doing this to myself? So maybe, just maybe, this wasn't unexpected at all. Maybe Carr has been planning this for months, waiting for the right moment to step away and step into something new. The legacy question. Here's the million-dollar question. How will Derek Carr be remembered? Statistically, he's one of the most productive QBs of his era. He holds most of the Raiders' passing records. He threw for over 35,000 yards and more than 200 touchdowns. On paper, that's impressive. But football isn't just about stats. It's about moments, championships, legacy-defining wins. And that's where Carr's resume feels incomplete. No deep playoff runs, no MVPs, no iconic Super Bowl moment. So will he be remembered as an underrated franchise QB who never had enough help? Or just another good, not great quarterback lost in the shuffle of NFL history? That's where his media career comes in. Because if Carr becomes a star on TV, his legacy could actually grow. Think about it. Tony Romo was criticized endlessly as a player, but now he's beloved as an analyst. Could Carr follow the same path? Audience interaction. I want to throw this to you, the audience. Do you think Carr retired too early? Would you have liked to see him play a few more years, maybe as a backup somewhere? And do you think he'll succeed in the media world, or will fans see him as just another ex-QB trying to stay relevant? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading them because this one has me genuinely curious. Hypotheticals. The what-if game. Let's play the what-if game for a second. What if Derek Carr had never broken his leg in 2016? Could the Raiders have made a Super Bowl run and changed the course of his career? What if the Raiders hadn't cut ties with him in 2022? Would he have thrived in Vegas with Davante Adams, his old college buddy? And what if Carr had been drafted by a more stable franchise from the start? Say the Patriots, Steelers, or 49ers. Will we be talking about him as a future Hall of Famer instead of a guy transitioning into broadcasting? The NFL is full of these sliding door moments, and Carr might be one of the best examples of how circumstance shapes a career. Final thoughts. At the end of the day, Derek Carr's unexpected retirement isn't just the end of a playing career. It's the start of something new. He might not have lifted the Lombardi Trophy, but he's stepping into a role where his voice, his insight, and his story could have just as much impact. And maybe that's the lesson here. Greatness in the NFL doesn't always come from Super Bowl rings. Sometimes it comes from resilience, reinvention, and knowing when to walk away. So farewell to Derek Carr, the quarterback, and welcome Derek Carr, the media personality. Something tells me this might just be the beginning of his most interesting chapter yet. Microphone, and that's where I'll leave it. But what do you think? Will Carr surprise everyone and become the next big thing in sports broadcasting, or will fans always remember him more for what he didn't accomplish on the field? Let's talk about it below.